Marine Le Pen lost the French election on Monday, and we're going to talk about why that's a big deal by breaking it down into two important segments. The first one is what Europe would have looked like had Marine Le Pen won, and secondly, we're going to look at what made her such a controversial candidate and why it's important or a disaster that she lost, depending on your political beliefs. Now, before we get into that, I want to talk about the media coverage surrounding Le Pen. I thought it was particularly atrocious, and a lot of Western media outlets were assigning labels such as neo-fascist. I saw a lot of comments calling her a Nazi sympathizer to far-right nationalist, and here's why this is important. Mostly because those are just buzzwords. They're there to play on your emotions and to make you look no further into a candidate. Everybody does it, both sides of the party, but this time around I saw a lot of attacks on her using those kind of words. Anyway, I hope this video gives you a bit better of an explanation of why the French election was such a big deal and what could have happened had she won. As always, thank you for watching. Let's talk about what Europe would have looked like or might have looked like had Marine Le Pen been elected. Now, the biggest thing and one of her biggest talking points throughout the election was being very anti-European Union. She promised a referendum similar to the one that Britain saw to leave the EU. Now, this has been causing a lot of uncertainty in the European Union because had France had a referendum and decided to leave the European Union, in my opinion and in many experts' opinions, that would have been kind of the last nail in the coffin for the European Union. It might not have fallen apart tomorrow, maybe even not next week or next month, but we would slowly see a decline in the European Union as the only other major economy left would have been Germany, and Germany simply can't prop up several other nations. Another big factor, you would have seen a much harsher stance on Islamic immigration. Marine Le Pen was very for stripping people with dual citizenship from Islamic countries of their French citizenship should they be found to have any ties to extremist movements or anything even remotely worrisome related to terrorism. She didn't want to allow very many immigrants. She was very pro-France, just kind of isolationism from France, focusing on pro-French policies. I think we would have seen the weakening of NATO. I didn't find anything about her talking about it when I looked. But that's, those are just some simple things that you can just easily state that we would have seen. But it would have definitely opened up a more conservative Europe. We would have seen probably right-wing candidates do better in other elections. So we really can't tell for certain what Europe would have looked like, but we can for sure know that we would have seen strict immigration from France. We would have definitely seen a weaker European Union, because even if the French people had decided to stay in the European Union, she could definitely levy her political power to really try to withdraw from it or weaken the European Union as much as possible. Now, what made her such a controversial candidate is basically all of the policies I just talked about. A lot of people said that she was a xenophobic fascist because she disliked Islamic immigration. Now, France has had more problems with terrorism than many countries in Europe, and she is a response to this. And I think that's one thing that has been overlooked, is there are problems with Islamic immigration in France that aren't talked about very much on media, but she represents a lot of the grievances of French people. And so when people talk about Le Pen, you also need to understand the ideology behind her and what got her on there. And those kind of policies, along with leaving the EU, she also had some opinions about Vichy France's role in the Holocaust, which she downplayed, that made her a very controversial candidate. Overall, people are heralding her loss as an end of far-right nationalism and the end of fascism in Europe, and I really want to remind people that she represents a party known as the National Front, which has changed its image a lot since she inherited the party from her father, but still, it is still a political party holding seats in their National Assembly, which is their Congress, for those Americans watching. So we should also be wary that, I'm not endorsing a candidate. I don't think it's a good or a bad thing that she lost. I don't live in France. But we just need to remember that just because the president lost doesn't mean she's gone away. It doesn't mean her party is disappearing. So when you see people online saying this is the end of far-right nationalism, this is the end of whatever buzzword they've attached to, attack Le Pen or that political idea or that political party, that these ideas are still alive and well in France, and still we need to remember that 33% of the country voted for her. And so we will see a very interesting France moving forward, and it will be interesting to see